In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, me and my brother James, we are going to discuss some of the top international prospects that will be in the 2025 NBA Draft. A few of them actually played over the last week at the FIBA U18 EuroBasket. It was in Finland. So James and I, we're going to just share our thoughts on some of the guys that stood out and maybe disappointed. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of a new international scouting service called Big Board Global. And in that newsletter, I'm going to basically cover some of the top international prospects for colleges to target. Some will be NBA prospects. So if you're a college coach and you want to know about some prospects that you need to get on early, check out NBA. Not NBA Big Board, but check out Big Board Global. But before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You can get $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. All right, what up, James? It's been a minute. I mean, obviously we talk, well, may not be obvious to other people, but we talk every day. But this is our first time doing a pod. It's been a minute, man. I think it's like April or so, or maybe.
It's been that long?
Yeah, it's been that long. I mean, we did the Dubai after ANGT. We did Dubai. That was in April, and that was no, I think that was March.
Yeah, it was March because April I was in Nebraska for Adidas.
So as you know, that was like the day before I left was when we found out about my wife's cancer. And so if you missed the last episode that I did, I kind of gave an update on my wife and why I had been out and missed, the most important part of draft season because I was dealing with my wife's cancer and man, just trying to be a good husband, trying to be a good father, and sometimes you got to sacrifice. And but everything's good now. My wife is back at work. She's halfway done with the hard part of the chemo. But anyway, I covered a lot of that on the last episode. But I want to talk about some of the guys that stood out at the 2024 EuroBasket under 18s. And the U18s is at least to me, it's like the highlight of the summer as far as like scouting international prospects. For a lot of guys, it's their first time that they're actually draft eligible. And you usually find a lot of the best under 18 players in Europe play at this particular tournament. At the U20s, a lot of the guys aren't playing U20 because maybe they're in college and some of the best players are in the NBA or playing professionally at that point. The U19s is usually pretty good. Last year at the U19s, we saw the top two picks and Zachary Reese-Shea and Alex Sarr. We saw them play, which is interesting. They only averaged 7.4 points per game, and they both had the same exact average, and they went number 1 and number 2 overall. So on one hand, you can look at that and say that the numbers as far as like national teams and international play in the summer may not mean that much because we've seen guys dominate, but we saw guys that average less than 10 points go 1 and 2. So with that being said, I want to talk about a guy that stood out the most to me, which is Ben Saraf from Israel. Now, I had seen Ben play, we both saw him play on Basketball Without Borders in February All-Star Weekend. I mean, to say that he had a phenomenal tournament is like an understatement. I thought that he established himself as one of the best international players. Well, he's been known as one of the best international players, but I feel like he just didn't get a lot of draft love. Let me just go over these numbers for you. 28 points per game. He shot 44.7% from the floor, 36% from three on a healthy 6.7 attempts per game. He had multiple 40-point games. And I think that he just made a name for himself and he established himself as a guy that we need to talk about in the 2025 draft from the international ranks. So what are your thoughts on Ben Saraf?
Yeah, going back to like Basketball Without Borders, he didn't stand out in that situation. I saw his name kept popping up on the timeline because he was hooping, obviously, in Finland. And I texted just like, is that the same dude from Basketball Without Borders?
Same dude.
And yeah, so, his film, just watching it, like, he's really good. He's a three-level scorer, which I do like because sometimes, or I guess a lot of times, it's like, teams may say, hey, the mid-range is whatever, but like he's good at getting into his spots in the mid-range. He shot the ball well, as you say, from three. Got a little bit of sauce off the dribble. Um, will he be dynamic? And is he dynamic enough to be a lead guard in the 2025 NBA draft? That is something I'm going to be looking out for. But it's hard to like knock him because again, he had multiple 40 balls, played very well. Believe he went back and forth against was that Serbia, where he went at it with my main man. We'll talk about him probably soon. Savo Drezic. I guess my biggest issue is with Saraf is that finishing at the rim. He's probably gonna have to get a lot better at. I got him even though he's like he's about 6'4". I want to say they list him at 6'4".
6'6".
He's 6'6".
Yeah,
Okay, so
man.
that's even more alarming. At 6'6", he was roughly at 56% at the rim. And like that is concerning in a sense where if you take out like the fast break layups, he kind of struggle to finish in traffic. But at the same time, I think he's good in the in-between game, which will help out and will keep defenses honest. But it's really hard to knock him. I mean, he did his thing out there. And like you said, he made a name for himself in the 2025 draft, at least to be on the radars.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the finishing at the rim. I would be more concerned with him going right. I mean, he was tough to stop going left, but he averaged 8.3 foul attempts per game in the tournament. So even when he got to the rim and didn't finish, he still was putting a lot of pressure on the defense. I mean, I like his size. I thought that the scoring, the crazy scoring outburst kind of overshadowed his passing. I think he's a really good passer as far as getting into the paint. Now he is like a high risk, high reward passer, but what I like the fact is that even though he throws risky passes, he didn't have a lot of turnovers. Like he didn't average a crazy amount of turnovers. He's very good at getting into the paint and whipping those crazy live dribble passes to the man in the corner. He finds his guys. I do like the fact, like you said, when it comes to the mid range, he knows that teams were looking to pack the paint against him. And I think that played a role in his finishing numbers not being the most efficient. But teams knew that he's trying to get to the rack, especially going left. And then I thought he did a good job of shooting over the top of smaller defenders, knocking down mid-range jumpers. I mean, he scored on all three levels. The biggest knock on him prior to this tournament was, is he a good enough shooter? And 36% on like 6 attempts per game, a little under 7 attempts per game. I think that's a good way to start as far as proving people wrong about his shooting. I'm curious to see how he looks next year in Germany. He'll be replacing Juan Nunez, but overall, I like him. I thought that he played. I mean, you can't play much better than what he played. And the part that really stood out to me about this tournament was that the guys that came in with the hype, Nolan Traore from France, Noa Essengue from France, and Hugo Gonzalez, those guys are, I've seen them as lottery picks on a lot of 2025 mock drafts. None of those guys made the All-Star 5, which is the top 5 players from the tournament. And Ben was the guy that led the tournament in scoring. He led the tournament in steals also. And so I thought that, on the defensive end, he showed that he can make an impact even when he's not scoring. But he scored a lot of this game. He averaged 4 steals a game. So if you combine his stocks, it's like 5 stocks per game. So I thought he did a a tremendous job as far as like putting himself on the radar. He's well known in Europe, but as far as like putting himself on the radar to be on draft boards in the next few weeks or months.
I agree. Like I said, man, he did a lot, high volume, high usage. He filled the stat sheet. He got what he wanted, especially going left. But like I said, just finishing at the rim, that's something that you can improve on. But if that was like the only like glaring thing that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also has to do with spacing. All right, when we return, we're going to talk about the guys that I mentioned a few minutes ago that were on draft boards that everybody was paying attention to. We're going to talk about the two French guys, Nolan Traore and Noa Essengue. But let's talk about Game Time, which is my personal favorite app when it comes to to buying tickets. And I'm not saying that just because Game Time is a sponsor. Like Game Time is the app that I use when I want to buy tickets. I love the fact that they have priority last minute deals where you can save up to 60% when you buy last minute tickets, whether it's for sports or concerts or comedy or theater. They have the flash deals where you can save with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And then they have zone deals. I like with their zone deals, you can choose a section and Game Time would choose a seat for you. And so far, the times that I've used it, it has worked out for me. And then there's the all-in pricing, which is so important, simply because on a lot of different apps, the prices say the ticket is, let's say, for example, $50. And then by the time you hit the checkout button, the ticket went up to like $120. So with Game Time, just the toggle, you can toggle the button and you can see the all-in pricing. So it shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And then you get the panoramic view of the seat of your choice in the app. It's not a generic view of the stadium, it's the actual seat. So imagine, some of these stadiums have 20,000 seats. So there's a view of every single seat in the arena. But the lowest price guarantee is the deal. That's where Game Time is the best. You get a lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms apply. But again, create an account, use the redeem code Locked On NBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Once again, thank you. Thank you so much for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On NBA podcast because there is no offseason in the NBA. And the Locked On NBA podcast provides daily analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as formed and as entertained as Locked On NBA, which is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And it is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. All right. Second segment. Let's get into the French connection, Nolan Traore and Noa Essengue. France was 6-1, but they still ended up finishing in fifth place, which the 6-1 record, I mean, you would take that in a tournament. But when you have a team that has two guys that are expected to be first round picks or maybe lottery picks, and you finish in fifth place, that can be a little alarming. Now, Traore is a guy that I really like. I was, kind of iffy on him, but I really turned the corner on him when I saw him play at the Hoop Summit in Portland back in April. That's when he really stood out to me, just like his overall speed, how he gets to the cup, his passing. I think it was VJ Edgecombe that said he's the best point guard that he's ever played with. And so Traore came into this particular tournament with a lot of buzz, especially when the way he played at the Adidas Next Generation tournament, and he led a team is called PFFB. He led them to the finals, had a 45-point game. I mean, he was just phenomenal in that tournament. And then at the FIBA U18's EuroBasket, I felt like defenses were geared to stop him from scoring. And he only averaged about 14 a game. I think he had less than 20 points in 6 of the 7 games. But overall, he was efficient from the floor. He led the tournament in assists. So that's the first thing that I want to say is that he led the tournament in assists at 9.3 assists per game. But he shot 49% from the floor and 42% from three. But he had a game against Lithuania. Well, if you look at the stats, it seemed like everybody was lighting up Lithuania's defense. But he had 29 and 11 in that game. Then he had a game where he just missed a triple-double. So I thought he played well. I mean, I was expecting him to average a little more than 14 a game, but the 9.3 assists, which led the tournament, I'll take that. The problem was he averaged 4.7 turnovers, but I just received a text message from an NBA scout, and he asked me. I don't know why he was asking me, but he was asking me why didn't France put him on their national team? Because even though he turns the ball over, his words were he's trying to make something happen, and he felt like the French guards on the national team don't try to make anything happen. So anyway, that's a different subject. But what were your thoughts on Traore?
It was going to be hard to come back from, or I guess to repeat the success that he had at that next generation's tournament. But like you said, the playmaking was good. The almost five turnovers a game was alarming. Again, I love his speed. I think he does have a good change of pace. You mentioned Ben Saraf is left hand dominant. I think Traore is very right hand dominant. But again, if you can't stop me from getting to where I want to get to, it kind of doesn't really matter. I do like his speed. We had that conversation. I done tweeted it a few times. I don't know how he wasn't on a national team, but that's not what this podcast is about. But I think his decision making was, while he did have high assist numbers, I think his decision making just like it needs to still improve. A couple times while he does have good play pace with a lot of fast guards, I think he can get sped up. And that's how he kind of like drives into turnovers. A couple times the spacing was bad. There was a play where he drove right and the Essengue was there in the dunker spot and there was just nowhere to go. And then he got caught like leaving his feet. I really don't care that you jump to pass, but at the same time, it wasn't it wasn't the good jump. It wasn't the good Tyrese Halliburton jump passes. It was jump passes where I'm trying to get a layup and oh shoot, there's nothing there, so I'm trying to make something happen. I don't think that this tournament, I guess if you call it a disappointment, because the bar has been raised since the Hoop Summit in this last tournament that he played in. I don't think he was disappointing in a sense. But I do think that there are things that he does need to work on. Again, the jump shot looks good. He was efficient. I think he's going to be a top. I mean, if I was picking today, which makes zero sense, he'd probably be a top five pick just because he can hoop and he's fast. He's going to get downhill. Very good playmaker. Turnovers, maybe it was a one-off. It's something that I'm going to have to pay attention to going forward, though.
So you think there's going to be 3 consecutive years where a French prospect is selected in the top 5?
Yes, I believe so. But I also think that last year, 2024, the two French guys, I don't think they'll be if you did a redraft, I don't think they'll be top five picks at the same time. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I just think Traore is the goods. And in this draft, as far as point guards go, it's him, it's Dink, it's Dylan Harper, right? And then Dylan Harper and Dink would be under a bigger microscope because they're playing, well, at least Dylan will be playing in America on TV. Dink you're gonna have to dig a little deeper into for his G League stuff. And then Traore will be overseas. But I feel like Traore, with his size and his passing ability and his just speed, I think he's gonna give himself a chance to go top five.
And he's referring to Dink Pate, who played for the G League Ignite last season and will be playing for the Mexico City Capitanes this year. All right, what did you think about his teammate, Noa Essengue? I like Noah. I like what he brings to the table as this 6'9", 6'10" athletic wing that is a scorer, but I think that there's real upside for him as a versatile defender. He gets to the basket, draws a lot of fouls, rebounds. The jump shot is concerning. He was 2 of 13 on jumpers in the tournament and 111 from 3. But he's a guy that gets his points and just kind of gets busy without a jumper. And I think that if he shows flashes of a jumper this year, just flashes of a jumper, I think he could be someone that could enter the top 5 discussion because he rebounds, he can move the ball, but he just impacts games with his athleticism and his motor. We were in Dubai for the tournament, and we
Oh, he was the
actually,
best player by far there in Dubai, for sure.
but we missed the game, the championship game, where he had 33 points and 18 rebounds.
Yeah.
He had like 3 steals, 4 blocks, and an overtime game. No, we were there. We left early because we
Yeah,
had to give.
my battery was running out and I had to catch a flight, man.
Yeah, I think at halftime, I could be wrong. At halftime, he may have had like 10, so we missed
Yeah.
like. But yeah, I just like the way he moves, and I just think that at 6'10", with his defensive versatility and upside, I think he has a chance. It's just the jumper has to improve.
See, I don't think he's a three at all because he can't shoot. And I think he's a four in the half court. I think he's gonna have to be. I think he's better off as a play finisher than a play starter, which is why I think he's a
Yeah.
four. He's obviously dynamic in transition. He somehow grabs every rebound and still gets leak out dunks. When we saw him in Dubai again, blocked, steals, he has grab and go potential. I will say this about the jump shot. He didn't shoot well, but he shot jump shots this time. He didn't shoot him in Dubai at all. I don't remember him shooting him in between that. There's another term, I forget the name, where he didn't shoot him, but he was taking them. So that's a sign that he's working on his game. All right. I don't have the Dubai stats in front of me, but I know for a fact he shot like trash from the foul line. This one, and in this under 18, he shot 69.7% from the free throw line.
On about
So
eight
that's
attempts
an
a game.
improvement.
Yeah.
And again, we know he's getting hacked like crazy. So that's an improvement. I am buying I'm not buying him as a shooter, but I'm understanding that he's working on his jump shot, and then you'll take that from there. But I think he's a four. Again, play finishing four. He does show a little bit of ability to pass, like in a short roll and like find guys. I don't think he's gonna ever get an opportunity to play the three because I don't think he has a physical. He doesn't have the handle to play the three full time, but he will have an opportunity to play the four. As far as him being a top 10 pick, that's going to have to be based off of him being able to shoot the ball for me. Because even at the four, even with handles or a good handle and his motor and his defense, you're still going to have to be able to space the floor in a sense, unless you're like the Giannis's of the world. Like, name a four that is a non-shooter that plays the four because as a non-shooting four, you eventually become a five, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I want to see him be able to knock down shots.
Here's what I believe, and before I go to break, he's 17 years old, and his birthday is December 18th, 2006. So he is just a, I mean, like 12, 13 days away from being
20,
2007 born, which means he
26,
wouldn't
yeah.
even be eligible for the 2025 draft. And so um, I've heard a story. I don't know how true it is that he was actually a preemie, so he was supposed to be born in February. So that kind of plays a role in why the frame is a little thin. So I think there's upside for him to add onto his frame and then improve as a shooter because he's so young. I think he's going to end up being one of the youngest, if not the youngest player in the 2025 draft because right now he's only 17 years old. All right, when we return, we got to talk about Hugo Gonzalez. I have my opinion on Gonzalez's play. If you look at the numbers, he played well, but I think Hugo may have hurt his stock a little bit with this play, this tournament. So I want to get James's opinion. But before we get into Hugo Gonzalez and a few other players that caught my attention, I want to talk to you about eBay Motor because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything, absolutely everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, I'm actually a style guy, but I like speed and power. But anyway, eBay Motors has you covered. They have over 122 million parts for your favorite car, and you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or they will give you your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. And the eBay Guarantee Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, last segment, Hugo Gonzalez. Hugo is a player that I've been scouting for a couple years now. My first time watching him play was in 2022. It was at a tournament. It was in Bassano, Italy, and I had heard the hype about him. And then when I watched him play, he lived up to the expectations. And I mean, he was just bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic, more intense than everyone else. He played with a lot of passion. Ironically, the name of the tournament was the Play for Passion tournament. It was like a U16 tournament. And so I saw him as a guy like this is a name that we're going to be hearing about in the 2025 NBA draft. I think that he's going to be talked about as a top 10 pick. So I followed him closely. I watched him play. Actually, no, I went to Madrid last fall and I watched like Real Madrid's U18 team, but I didn't get a chance to see him play because he was suiting up for the Real Madrid senior team. So it's kind of like you're looking for at the JV game, and the dude you come to see is suiting up varsity. So, but I've had a chance to like watch his film. He's still the same player he was when I saw him 2 years ago. Sometimes the intensity and competitive fire, it's like on one hand, it's his greatest asset, but on the other hand, it leads to him like playing out of control and getting texts because he's so passionate. But anyway, with this tournament on paper, he played well. If you just look at the numbers on paper, he averaged 20 a game. I think he like was fourth in scoring, and he filled the stat sheet, especially on the defensive end. He averaged like 3 steals. Well, he averaged 3 steals and 2 blocks at a tournament I saw earlier this year. But this year, I mean, like at the U16, I'm sorry, at the under 18s, my podcasting is a little rusty because I haven't recorded in months. But he averaged 2.7 steals and 2.0 blocks. So I mean, you'll take 4.7 stocks, but the jumper is still a work in progress. He's been labeled as like the best Spanish prospect since Ricky Rubio. Spain was like 3-4. They finished in 13th place, which was shocking because they finished in second last year, I believe. But anyway, what were your thoughts on Hugo's performance? I thought that he scored, but it was some ugly, very ugly possessions. And I have a comparison that people are probably gonna bang my head over, but what were your thoughts on Hugo's performance?
All right, so first of all, I'm Shaq when it comes to Hugo Gonzalez. I wasn't familiar with his game, right? So I heard the name before. This is the time when I lock in because like Draymond said, being the best guy at 16 means you're just the best guy at 16. So with that being said, I'm not gonna spoil your comparison, but when you sent that to me, it kind of messed with my head for a few possessions because I was like, dang, Rafa might be right. But as I watched him further, I like his game, man. He shows flashes, right? And I don't think, no, I'm not gonna say that yet. I like his for one, the size translate. He's a big dude, big kid,
I
six
have a
six.
question about that. I've seen him
You
listed
don't
as
think
six
he's six
six,
six two
six
ten?
seven, but then on the official FIBA site, they have him listed as 6'4".
Nah, no way he's 6'4". He looked okay. I forgot which one it was. I think Pro Ballers said they had him at 6'6", 210 or something like that. But he looks the part. He passes the eye test. What I have down for my notes is that he is not a great passer, but he can pass some. He doesn't have a great handle, but he can handle some. He had a player in transition. He came down and hit somebody with the double left hand in and out pull up. When I saw that, the guys that you had texted me, who you're gonna talk about here in a few, none of them have that currently or had that, and that's why I was like, okay, Ralph, I can't get down with that. I do like Hugo Gonzalez. He shows some craft at the rim. He's got like a little left hand going right layup. He had a little slowdown in transition. Like he's talented. I am seeing now why he is projected to where he is going to where people why excuse me I see why people project him to go where he is projected to go is what I'm trying to say.
So I wasn't as actually thought he was the second best player on Spain's team. I thought I might be pronouncing the name wrong. Mario Saint Superi, the best name in the 2025 draft potentially. I thought he was their best player. But Hugo's a little wild to me. Like he has some ugly possessions where he just puts his head down and he's driving into traffic. And he's been doing that ever since I've been following him. But I think now the physicality, guys are starting to catch up to him. Like if you look at his frame, he's well built, strong legs, and he's always been like this really aggressive downhill driver. But I think guys are starting to catch up to him. And even though he can score, he's got some Ron Holland in his game. And when I say he's got
No,
some Ron, he's not as athletic as Ron. Now, Hugo's a really good athlete, but he's not as like Ron's like an elite level athlete. He's not as athletic as Ron. He's a guy that's going to get his 20 points per game. And what's impressive about Hugo is that he gets his points per game in like Real Madrid's system where it's like so many talented guys and it's a bunch of mouths to feed. But he does get his points, but he's a little out of control. It's one of those things where even if the jump shot isn't falling, he's still going to score because he's going to draw, fouls. He's going to get to the foul line. He's just going to impact the games with his aggression and motor, energy, toughness, and so on. You would like the jump shot to be a little bit better. He's still a very streaky shooter. He shows that he has enough of a jump shot, especially a pull-up jump shot where you have to respect it. But I think like in a scaled down role where he has to shoot at off the catch, I'm wondering, is he going to be better or is he going to be worse when he's forced to shoot? But he just had some ugly, very ugly possessions to me. I thought that, like I mentioned, the intensity is like a great asset, but he had 4 games where he had over 4 fouls. And then he also had 4 games out of 7 where he had 4 turnovers or more. So I was a little turned off by the turnovers, the ugly possessions, and his. I like the way he defends now. He does accept the challenge, but the way that he can be a little too aggressive. And then when I say he has some Josh Green in his game, it's like no pace. And when I usually see Spanish guards, that's one thing they have is pace because they're usually not like the most athletic. He's athletic and he has no pace. I mean, he's going full speed from point A to point B, which on one hand is good, but on the other hand, sometimes you need a bit of pace. And so he reminds me a little bit of like a Ron Holland mixed with Josh Green, which at the end of the day, that's a first round pick. That's a NBA
lottery pick.
rotation player. And so it's not a bad thing, but I don't know if he's I just think he just needs to add a little bit more pace, slow down a little bit. And I do think that he would be a much better passer once the game slows down to him because I think he can see the plays.
Yeah, he's a downhill passer. He didn't have the pace of definitely not the pace of a point guard, but he didn't have the pace of some of the other wings that you would see. I guess if you count then Saraf as a whatever wing since
He's a
he's
lead
six
guard.
six lead guard, he definitely wasn't that. But he my favorite phrase, he might be a permanent potential guy where he does 8 things that makes you say wow, and then he follows it up with 10 things that's like, hey, what are we doing out here? So he might be permanent potential. I don't know. I don't necessarily, I think from what I saw there is something to work with. But I don't think he's gonna be like a pick and roll ball handler, but rip through 2 dribbles, get to your spots. Again, he's strong, he finishes at the basket. I think he's gonna be fine. But I don't know where do you have him? Is it too early for you to project? I mean, he looks like a first round pick. I don't,
Yeah,
this is still way too early for stuff to make these wild projections, in my opinion. But what do you think about him
I
as
think
far
he's a
as like
first
his
round
draft
pick.
range?
I think it's
First
a
round
first
pick.
round pick. I just don't know how much he's going to play this year because I don't know if he's too old to be on the U18 team and then he's going to have to play on the senior team. I just don't know how many minutes he's going to get there. So I think it's going to be
Do you think
pretty,
he should? You think he needs to get a scholarship, come to America real quick?
uh, hey man, it's hard to leave Madrid. I mean, we've seen Sergio Yui stay in Madrid for a long time. I don't know. I just think it's going to be interesting.
I said he can go to Missouri, go to play one of these Big 12 teams that had to reload. You get all that usage,
Yeah,
plus
no,
the
that
draft stock.
makes sense. I just don't know what his buyout situation is like. I do know this much. He would command a significant NIL. I mean, I've heard some of the numbers that some other international guys got. I think his NIL could probably he's basically turning down money to stay in Madrid. But then if you look at the top guys from last year's draft, they played overseas. They didn't come to the States, and the guys that came to the States, their draft stock fell significantly. So I think that's a factor. Well, man, we are running out of time. We might have to do a part two later on this week. I actually be in Paris. I'm on the road again. I'm going to the Olympics in Paris And so I'll probably do an episode there. Maybe if I'm lucky, I can catch the gold medal gang. But anyway, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Once again, thank you for making Locked On NBA Big Board your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. The Locked On NBA podcast, because there is no off season with Locked On. Once again, it's Rafael and my brother James, and we are out of here.